Hi everyone, this is Shauna with Jeffco PTA, and we are here now for our 12 o'clock class with Dr. Joyce Brooks. She was with the NAACP Education Chair, I believe, and Joyce has so much information for us. We are so excited and delighted to have you here, so I am just going to let you kick it off and teach us and guide us. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Shauna. Good morning, parents. How are you? You are my heroes. Woohoo! I am not one of those speakers that is so, Shauna, how would you describe it? And
You're
bore
interactive,
people.
I would say.
Oh, that's it. That's good. I'm interactive. And that is an African tradition. It's call and response. I call out, I say, you hear what I'm talking about? You said, that's right. That means that, you know, we're getting good feedback. I'm getting good feedback and we're interacting. But
Uh-oh. Is it me or is Joyce frozen?
Joyce is frozen.
Oh, no. Well, let's wait a minute and see if it comes back. If for any reason there are technical difficulties and we can't access this, Jen and I will work together. Jen's our fall conference chair, and huge thanks to her because she has been a lifesaver today. So for everything, we've had a few technical difficulties, which isn't too bad for as many classes as we've offered. So it looks like Joyce went away. So let's see if maybe she logs back in and we can get it going again. And if for some reason it doesn't work out, then you all will have 58 minutes of a break. So, and Jen and I will get it rescheduled and, you know, and re-recorded as well. And we'll announce that. Oh, here's Joyce now. There you are. Oh, you are muted, Joyce.
this has never
There
happened.
you are. It happens.
I
know.
See, that's because you're my favorite people.
We love you. We love you very much.
You know the reason you're my favorite people? Because you are the real leaders in America. But for a long time, many decades, now I'm 73, so I've been around a few decades. I'm still not old because I haven't been around 200 years yet. But parents used to be so honored. The people, the leaders honored parents because number one, they were the voters, they were the creators of future Americans. But we have allowed, see, because these things don't happen in what we have recognized, what we tend to call upper leadership. These don't happen unless we allow them to happen. So good people like us have to speak out and say, hey, don't forget the parents. But Jeffco PTA is doing it. You are recognized in this state as educational leaders. So the whole basis of what we're going to chat about today is from my belief, and I believe it's yours too, is that parents are the natural education leaders. You are the children's first teacher. What you send to the school is a child ready to learn. Now, you don't have to be able to read or write. I don't know where we get this belief that a parent should be college educated in order to really help the child succeed. When I was doing my research for my doctorate, I argued with my other colleagues and professors all the time. And they said, chances are, if the parents aren't college educated, the children won't succeed, because that's what research says. I said, we can make research say whatever it wants to say. You just find the right words and you let that back up your statement. But what is true, and I'm probably the oldest person in the room, I like saying that. What is true is that children get to know their parents before they know anyone. Now, all of us can agree with that. So I thank you guys for being here, taking the time, and most of you, if not all of you, are people who do the extra. You go over and above just helping your own children. You are helping to build a community of parents and children who succeed. I want to thank you as another American and as another Coloradan for what you're doing. Let's give yourselves a hand. You know, you can put your clapping hand. Do you know how to do that in the Zoom? Okay, everybody put your clapping hands in the Zoom. Yay, yay. And you know what? I'm gonna put my brown hands up there. Where am I? Ah, yay. Okay. Foundational is teaching your children how to interact with others, starting with you, the parents, and the siblings at home. That's so foundational. My dad, who didn't get above 8th grade because there was no high school in our town for Black people. In order for him to go to high school, he would have had to go 100 miles. Well, good Lord, he was born in 1909. To go 100 miles when he was, what, 15? Because he was probably 15 and 16 in 8th grade. That would have, where are you going to stay? How are you going to get there? But boy, did he value education. But you know, most of all, what he valued? That my siblings and I knew how to interact with each other. And that's what they taught us more than anything. And his statement was, you know what? When you guys get along with each other and you learn to not just to love each other, but know how to talk to each other. We don't use rude language. You know, I mean, that would really upset him when we said rude things to each other. And he and my mother modeled what they talked about. Very important, isn't it, parents? Your children can't hear what you're saying for seeing what we're doing. I can't say you. I was a parent. I mean, I guess I'm still a parent. My kids are middle-aged people now, they're old. But what he taught us was he knew he was releasing us to the world. A world that he knew would be different when we got to be adults. My parents were told that they would never have children. It took them 10 years to have babies. But they always helped other children. And they were so highly educated. Remember, I told you, they didn't get above 8th grade. Well, my mom did. She went back to high school with my sister in an adult education program. She just cried when she got her 12th grade graduation. You know, what it's called, diploma. And I remember thinking, that's not really a big deal. Oh, but it was. For her as a Black woman to be able to finish high school and her mother was there to see it. That was a dream come true because there was no high school for Black kids. In my town, there was no high school in Arkansas for Black kids until 1950. That's not been long, has it? So you have all these generations beforehand that didn't even get to go to high school. Every one of us should have known that about America because we should have gotten it in American history. Had we understood how certain groups were robbed of that in American history, we all would have said, Oh, I understand that. What can we do to all learn more about everyone? But at the same time, we would have learned about the contributions of those people that got robbed of an education. Because look at the contribution of my dad. He was a World War II veteran. He helped America win that war because he saw himself as an American. That's when my mom got pregnant with the first baby. And I was the boomer afterwards. 2 babies, 2 Americans. And this little Black girl was the first one in the whole county born in the hospital because they didn't have Black people be born in the hospital. And my dad had fought the war. You guys can comment, whatever, I'll jump in anytime. But my dad saw himself as an American. And when my mom got pregnant, I was born in February 47. My dad said months before, he said, okay, my daughter's going to be, well, he didn't say my daughter because they didn't know back then what you were. They were so happy to have children because they were told they weren't going to have any. And he said, we're going to have a baby in the hospital. This was something they didn't do for Black people. Well, they thought he was crazy. He said, oh, I'm a veteran. I fought for this country. This is my country. My tax dollars are paying for this hospital. I was born in the hospital. But they separated me from the white babies and put me in a little cage. They did not allow me to contaminate those white children, my God. But my dad told me that he sat there every night. I don't know how long they were in there. And he would tell me, you are beautiful. You are smart. You guys remember the help? She said, you is beautiful. You is smart. You is kind. And he was saying that to me. What was he doing for this little girl? Speaking life into her, speaking purpose into her, letting her know that you matter. You are a great person. Has nothing to do with your race. And you know what? I grew up believing that. And I started school 2 years before the Brown decision came down. And we had no restrooms in our school. But here's Daddy fighting for us to have everything that we needed because there was a Black school and a white school. And as I calculate the revenue per student back then, I saw it in Arkansas in the museum that they have in Little Rock now about the Little Rock 9. They talked about the dollars that were spent for white kids per pupil. So I'm gonna give you an example. In 1952, I guess it was 51, 52, I started first grade. We didn't have kindergarten. They must have spent $400 per white student and $50 per Black student. That was the state revenue for each kid. So $50 doesn't go very far. I'm using that as an example. It might have been a little more, but it was 4 to 1. So we didn't have restrooms. But when Brown passed, and I didn't know that at the time, later now that I've looked back in history, I'm putting these things together. That's when we got restrooms in our class, in our school building. You know where we went to the toilet? Outside. This is in America, y'all. Those are third world conditions that African Americans experienced in the South. It wasn't too much better in Colorado, because I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But how this group of people who were helping to develop an America were treated. I was going to ask a question, why should we look at how should we look at, we call it cultural inclusivity. We use all these terms, but I'm going to say, why should we talk about other groups? And I'm going to use especially Black groups, because that is the group that was most raped by Americans in terms of enslavement in this country, and whose culture was actually snatched away, even though we've done some of that to many other racial groups. But for Black people, that culture was actually torn out. And the way Africans were brought here from, and see, all that should have been in our history books as we learn building America, because we learned from that. We learned that was wrong. And there were whites and Blacks working together to correct those wrongs. We shouldn't look at it as something we're ashamed of, even though we are, but we corrected it. And we're still correcting some things. So, but we didn't talk about it in history, did we? We didn't talk about, so you don't know Black heroes. You don't know white heroes that really helped in this effort. Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman. How many of you have seen that movie, Harriet? Y'all got to see the movie. It is really good. And let your kids watch it with you. Sometimes people don't let the kids watch it because it might be, well, you watch it and then judge it. But that's what I want to get to. If the schools are not going to do it, and we want them to, and we want to work toward efforts in making them, I, as a parent, have a responsibility. I wanted my children, okay, I'm going to go back to my parents. My parents input in me the necessity for teaching me to live in this big world. They didn't see just America. Well, my dad had traveled because in the war, but they wanted to prepare us for a world. And in order to prepare us for a world with all kinds of people, they had to develop in us what we needed to kind of, I like to say, make it dance, groove, move through this world with confidence and courage. A lot of white children don't get that. And unfortunately, too many parents don't know how to give that. And it's really easy. But let's not allow media to teach us how to do it. So this is what I want to challenge you guys to do. First of all, I want you to understand that your children's world, for those of you who are younger parents, your children's world, even if, I guess, if your child is in anywhere between K through 12, their world is going to be far different than the world you entered at 21. That was input in me so strongly, and I couldn't have articulated it at the time this way. But what I look back on now and have been doing for some time, seeing what my parents were doing, they were raising us to succeed no matter what. But that there was information that we needed that they may not be able to give us. Remember, they only went to 8th grade. And you know what? In some ways, I'm so glad they were not educated, because it seems as though the more education we get, the more we begin thinking a certain way. And you have to go out and research on your own how to really think more broadly. So I was privileged enough to have parents that helped me to think different, to think broadly. I'm going to put it that way. So when I finished, I never had a white teacher until I was a junior in junior in college. I went to a historically Black college. So I was raised, as many of you were, with a monocultural perspective. So I knew nothing about whites. My parents didn't talk about what white people do and they don't like you. My parents didn't have time for that. They were busy telling me who I was and what I could do. So I finished high school in 1964 before most of you were born. That was the year in July when the Civil Rights Act was passed, which changed the Constitution of America and allowed me and other Blacks to go to the library, the public library, because it was closed to me. And you see my library back here.
Mhm.
I am a reader. I am hungry to learn. And I'm 73 and I've been like that all my life. And they wouldn't let me in the library, so I decided I'll build my own library too. I went to the library the day in Arkansas they said we could come into that library. You know what? I didn't go in angry because I didn't have time for that lady who treated me terrible at the desk when I didn't know I had to check out a book. And you have to check this out. I didn't know that. I hadn't had that experience. The public library that my parents paid taxes to would not allow us to enter in our little town. But with Civil Rights Act, we could go. Now it's up to me to do the reading. That's the first challenge I'm going to give you guys. You and I missed out on a lot in American history. Your children are too, currently. And I'm going to have parents. Here's a book. Who knows who Clara Brown is? Jonna, that's not fair. Clara Brown is one of the first pioneers of Colorado. She was an ex-slave. She became can you guys see the title of this book? If somebody can put the title in the chat box. I can't do it and talk too. It's called One More Valley, One More Hill by the story of Aunt Clara Brown. And it's by Linda Lowry. It is recommended for kids grade 4 and up. So I'm going to challenge parents to read it with the children, with your kids. I'm doing it with my grandkids. I just learned about this woman 2 years ago when my son and some other people, they're opening a women's center for abused women, and they're naming it after her. But let me finish telling you about her. I'm just going to tell you a little to whet your appetite. She bought her slavery in Virginia, I believe it was. She was 50 some years old, had been a slave all her life, of course. Her children had been taken from her and sold on other plantations. And her dream was always to at least find her daughter, her youngest. And it took her a lifetime. This woman ended up with slave masters because your slave master had to grant that. This teaches you something about some slave masters. They allowed their slaves to go free. She bought her freedom in her 50s and signed up with a wagon train to be the cook to come to Denver. Isn't that something? All the way. Wait a minute. Was she in She was in Virginia, and then I think she went to Kansas. Well, you said that's not far. You wait and you see how far she walked. Because, you know, they didn't really let her ride in the wagon. I'm not going to give it away. But I want to share with you, she became the wealthiest female in the West Isn't that amazing? As an ex-slave. And what I'm going to read to my grandkids is to show them, look what she did and didn't even have an opportunity. Look what you can do with all that you have. And she went back and she actually built the first laundry in Central City, Colorado. Went back and got other slave families, set them up, not just giving to them, but teaching them how to make it here in Denver, and I think they were I can't remember, somewhere in Colorado, Central City or Denver. The book will tell you. But the point here is that she gave back. Do you know that there is a window in the rotunda of the Capitol in her honor? Take your kids to see that. My grandkids and I are going to take a field trip. We're going to go and see that. There is a monument erected to her in Commerce City. Why Commerce City? I'm not telling you, you got to read the book. And she was she was recognized in the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame. And we had never heard of her. You guys have been here in Colorado longer than I have. She didn't show up in did you guys take Colorado history? Whatever, you should have taken it. I don't know if she's in the Colorado history books or not. You all hadn't heard of her, so. This is a woman for all of us as women and Coloradans to look up to, isn't it? This is a way you can infuse the teaching of people from other cultures to your kids, not from those poor people perspective, but I, as a person, need to know about all of the people in history that contributed to making our state great and our nation great. They were not just white men. They were white men, white women, black women, brown men, brown women. But if you only have one perspective, there's no wonder that we will have the kind of racial tension that we currently have. As a parent, and these are going to be my last words, and I'll open up for questions or comments. As a parent, I believe I raised my children in the late 60s and 70s, and my last one left home in 97. My commitment to my children, because I was a racist African American, I joined the Black Panther Party, and I felt that white people can't tell me anything anymore. And my dad said, oh, you'll be okay. You'll get past that. Because I know what I put in you. He was right. When I did not understand that I should be culturally inclusive until I was really doing my dissertation. And the chair of my dissertation committee at UCLA said, Joyce, you are a racist. I said, how dare you call me a racist? That is terrible. And he said, you just want to look at one cultural group. He said, our country and the world is made up of many people. And you must be open to learning about all people. I said, I do what I do. You just do what you do. Do you know that he was killed in an airline accident, American Airlines crash out of Chicago in 1979, coming from Chicago to Los Angeles? He and I were going to have lunch to celebrate the completion of my dissertation that Monday, and I read about it in the paper that Sunday. I didn't know he was on that plane. I was devastated. But what changed me was not what he said, I guess kind of what he said, but what I saw in his life. At his memorial service, we had one at Harvard and we had one at UCLA. There were all racial groups on those two campuses, at those memorial services, from throughout the community of those cities, Boston and Los Angeles, that honored this man. And I said, oh my God, he lived out what he believed. That day, it was 1979. Was it 79? Yeah. I started learning and teaching my kids about different, and you know where I started, where I thought a safe place to start was in history. Because in history, you find out what happened. What is the cause of this person's life? And I saw with my own kids, and I'm going to suggest this to you. When you do history, it's a safe place because this actually happened. This is nobody's opinion. And then you get to appreciate the strengths, the weaknesses, and you just learn so much. On that note, oh, and by the way, my children are 53, 48. When they get this old, you forget their ages, at 41. Each one of them is an avid reader of substance. Each one of them is committed in their communities or cities in which they live to help develop a great place to live. They're committed in their country. They've all always voted. I have one did vote, and now he votes more. But they are civic minded, not just to run for a political office, but they're civic minded to make their community stronger. And two of them have children, and they're teaching that to their children. I am so thankful that I changed and began learning. So now I'm a lifelong learner. I have so much to learn. So I'm going to stop and listen to you. You can ask questions, make comments. Shauna, you're on. You're in charge.
So I just turned everything on. And I've got you in a spotlight video so that you're in our spotlight as you should be. So, and we all love you and thank you so much for this. One of the things when Jen and John and I came to you and said, when we really wanted to build those, diversity, and we want to be inclusive in our PTAs, and, how do we authentically do that? And, you talked about education and what it looks like from us. So as a white woman living in the suburbs, and I honestly feel like my daughter who's in high school is probably a better ally than I am. And I grew up in a rural, northeastern Colorado. And I told everybody in the chat there too that the resources that we have on our diversity and inclusion page were developed in collaboration with you. And you suggested the book White Fragility, and it's still on back order, just so you know. It's really popular. And we put some videos up there from you too. And I think generally, our PTA leaders so badly want to be inclusive and want to make sure that families who are not white, whether they're Black or brown or Indigenous people of color, we want to be inclusive and we want to have them be a part of this, and we want to authentically help their children as well and have them be a part of that. Do you have advice for us as PTA leaders, so how we can authentically be a part or be an ally? How can we do that?
As you know, education, which means learning, is very key. Mm-hmm. And because we have been missing educated as Americans, all of us, about our true history, I'm promoting this everywhere I go. Let's start learning ourselves. And let's start in a safe place with history. I was supposed to have a book for you that a young girl wrote. It's a bibliography of Black female, young Black females that are heroes in books. I'll get that and send it to you. I bought for another group, and I don't have one. I gave them all away. I need it myself.
I'll put a link on the website. It's all good.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll get that to you. Anyway, I would say start there, as opposed to now you're going to see a real prejudice I have here. Race matters and all that. Yeah, set that aside for now. I told you guys white fragility because I wanted to challenge you in your thinking. But I believe that these are very safe places to start. And like I'm doing with my grandchildren, we're going to be reading this together and going through it together. And you could do 2 or 3 parents together with your kids or grandkids. Make it fun. I talked to a group of parents in Stapleton the other night, and I told them, make it fun. Because first of all, kids don't like reading because they don't see their parents reading. And in our culture, reading is not promoted. But if you can make it fun, like a movie, and I tell my grandkids, it's like a movie. We're going to do our own movie. And you trick them into learning. But at the same time, you're learning too. I read this 4th grade book. I could not put it down. I learned a lot about Denver's history. I thought I knew it. This is a woman who was helped to create it, to bring about a Colorado. See there, I comment too long. But my point is, let's start in a safe place. Otherwise, my fear is that it's tough if you start in a lot of these other books and you end up not doing it. Make it fun. Shauna, I'm sorry. I don't know if I answered your question. Shauna is frozen, or am I frozen?
No, Shauna's frozen.
I think
I'm
you
glad
did.
I'm not frozen.
I mean,
It wasn't you.
I can't be frozen twice.
Oh, she froze again. She didn't think she was frozen, but she froze again.
Poor baby. Now she knows how I feel.
We had a parent in the chat say that as a parent, I wish there was more of this in schools. We need to get it more into the schools itself.
Well, I think you are in schools. But the mere fact that you send your children, that shows you're in schools. But I know what she means, I think, or he means. I'll give you an example. Of course, it's very different than in the 80s. When my kids were in school, we lived in a community, Claremont, California, that's vastly predominantly white. And my children, my son in 1st grade, this little boy told him his hair felt like wool. No, like a rug. And I got a book. And the book was about curly hair, straight hair. It's a children's book. And I called the teacher, because couldn't email then. And I told her what had happened. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "No, that child was speaking from his perspective. My son loves his hair because we've taught him to love it. And he did not come home feeling badly about it. And I told him, you do have the most beautiful woolly hair. God just loved you the way he made your hair. And I said, but I have a book that I can come and read to the kids. May I? She let me come, and I sat on the rug with the kids. I said, now I'm going to let you feel my hair, but you really don't. I said, as Black people, we don't like you touching our hair, and you let you ask us because you put a dent in it. And I don't like a dent in my fro. At that time, I wore a bigger fro, afro. And my son had a big one. And the kids just loved it. I said, and they'd say, well, may I touch? I said, yes. I said, and it's different than yours. Different doesn't mean bad. It means different. And we had fun. Then we started playing on the floor. Look for opportunities, parents, where you can insert yourself as you learn. Remember, I had to learn this because I would have been very pissed off before, and I would have gone and set that teacher straight and the parent. What would that solve? Nothing. But what a learning opportunity. I'm so thankful that they gave a learning opportunity for the teacher as well as those children. And for my son, because I'm in there for him primarily, and for those other kids. So I just say, look for other opportunities to get into the school. Look for books I've looked at books in the library at the school. Sometimes I've seen books were all white. I was in a Black community, books were all Black. I said, there are other people in the United States. We've got to put other kinds of books up here for the children because we want the kids to begin seeing multi. The world is not all about you, one race, Joyce, is what I had to learn. So that's an opportunity. Another opportunity, look at the other images that are put up. Start looking at images. If it's all white people, that's not America. If all those images are just white children, if all those images are just Black children or brown children. But what about when we have images of all the children? What is the statement? A picture's worth 1,000 words? Because the more you multi-race those pictures, you're sending a message to those children. Oh, the world is, they won't articulate it as that, but they do see differences. So I think those kind of opportunities, parents, are ones you can take, and that's how you can be supportive of the school. That's how you infuse the schools. I did that in my kids' schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. When they finished, I had done 33 years of parenting. I was tired. When because my kids are spaced out. I didn't space them out. I don't know what happened. But anyway, 33 years of homework. And, and all the other stuff we have to do with schools. My son, the youngest, said, Mom, you seem very happy. You're just dancing at the graduation. Why are you so happy to get rid of me? I said, baby, this is my 33rd year. I am ready to let you go. I'm so proud of my children. But I was happy to be free because I knew that they were ready to soar, not just fly. I had done what I needed to do. Oh, yes, I did things wrong. But I knew what I did right could override the wrongs. My responses are too long. I'm sorry.
No, actually, your responses are full of good information that I think everyone is enjoying listening to. So,
Girl, at 73, you have to shut us up. We've lived.
Yeah. And Shauna actually just added to the chat too and said we need to remember our children are blank slates when it comes to learning about differences between races, cultures, and they learn from what we model. And that, oh my gosh,
That's right.
that's so true.
Yes.
When I was working for National PTA, ironically, Arkansas PTA was one of my states. And so I got to go there to their conventions with them, and it was sort of amazing. So just because, you know, I grew up in rural northeastern Colorado, so, and I think we had one Black family so that moved there and moved away. And, you know, at the time, and but when my dad was in the military, we traveled. I was around lots of Black families, so especially in Georgia. And then in Arkansas, at that PTA convention, oh my goodness. So, I mean, there's, you know, white women like me, and then there's the Black women who were there. And they had been coming to this convention. They were, in fact, the older ladies there were all Black women. And they had been coming to the Arkansas PTA convention for years and years and years and years. So it had, you know, grandchildren who had already graduated. And we don't quite have that, you know, diversity here in the Colorado. So at our convention and events. So, and I'm, you know, eager to have that, and eager to give that experience to my child and your children as well.
Mm-hmm. And
Anybody else? Go
I was
ahead.
going to suggest, like I did to some Stapleton parents, and that was one of my homework assignments for you guys.
Oh, good.
I gave it to these parents. I'm going to challenge you. And because I'm African American, I'm going to challenge you to get an African American friend and family. And tell them, I need an African American friend. Can you help me? That's, you know, that's a challenge for a white to say to a Black person. And you got to know who to say it to.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had people say, oh, she just wants me to be her friend now because Black Lives Matter. I said, well, good, be her friend. Show her how much you matter.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that people can not like, but some of you may not even know any Black people. Because I'm telling you, I didn't know any white people until I got to be an adult. I didn't know how you do your hair. All that was strange to me. So I can understand where you're coming from because I've lived monocultural. Most African Americans that you'll come in contact with have not lived that way because they're a lot younger than I am, and they've lived in a mixed area or environment. It's especially at school. But when you leave school, you don't have those relationships. I worked with a school in Denver. I shouldn't even go there, but I'll just mention it. And the parents wanted to go to the board on an issue. And I said, you guys are all white. They think you can afford to do this. You don't have any Black friends. And they lived in a mixed community in 5 Points. Mm-hmm. And the parents said, we're ashamed that we don't. Our kids have Black friends. I said, tonight, start getting you some Black friends. I said, otherwise, you're not going to win in this fight. But I'm going to challenge you just to see the difference. I have some white friends I hang with. Jonna is my friend. She and I argue and love each other. They're going to throw us off the board together.
I find it challenging. I came from the DC, Baltimore area.
Who's talking? I don't see the speaker. Who's it?
Beth.
Oh,
right
okay.
here.
All
Hi.
right.
I came from the DC, Baltimore area, and I went to University of Baltimore, which is not really predominantly white.
That's
but,
right.
you know, I found it challenging when I got up here 4.5 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, my daughter is not going to have much diversity in her life. What am I going to do about that? It really freaked me out. And, so we've had the conversations, and I was lucky enough to major in history at University of Baltimore. And I have a lot of knowledge to share with her, some knowledge to share with her, but I wish it was more integrated into schools instead of like a separate thing like art, oh, diversity, there, over there. I wish it was flowed through every conversation, every class, more so, because it's difficult for me. I'm white. So yes, I can teach her what I learned from books. She has her own books, and she has dolls, pretty much in every color. But it's difficult for me to integrate that without, because it is really white here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Beth, I'm sorry.
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. I just wish integrated, that's all.
One of the things I suggested to Stapleton parents, I'll suggest to you, there is an African American research library. I don't think you can get in right now, in Denver, in 5 Points. I would suggest put that on it's a museum in there about the contribution of African Americans in Colorado. That could be a field trip for your kids once the libraries open up. And 5 Points is the historical Black district in Denver. There are some great restaurants you could have lunch with your kids down there. One is Teeley's. A friend of mine has named that after her grandmother. She opened it, I think, 3 years ago. And that's a good way to really go to Black businesses. Well, their whole downstairs is a history library. John, you and I are going to have to go there for lunch one day. She serves it immaculate. I mean, she serves it like her grandmother would have served it. Her grandmother happened to be from Arkansas, I believe. She was born and raised in Denver, but she's bringing the history together. And she and her husband, who is a historian, have books and art and everything. You can go there for lunch or dinner and have an experience. Take the kids. They'd be welcome there.
Joyce, what was the name of that restaurant again?
Teellees. I think apostrophe S. And it's on 20th and Walton.
Beth, I was going to say that I would also recommend looking up different cultural centers that are throughout the state. I mean, definitely within Denver, but even like ones on campuses, and the different sort of events that they have on campus. So at UNC, where I went for my undergrad, we have different cultural centers on the campus. And like this year is the 35th anniversary of our Cesar Chavez Cultural Center. And they have a lot of different events throughout the year that they sponsor at the campus, and just really provide kind of this view into the different cultures that they represent. And so I would talk about, going to the different cultural centers, or like I listed one in the chat called Museo de las Americas. And they have a little museum in Denver, but then they also host different events throughout the year. And so you can go to their website, and they have different things, like cultural events that they host throughout the year. I don't know what it'll be like right now during the pandemic, but there's a lot of different stuff within the different cultures that I feel don't get advertised enough, but there are opportunities out there to be able to see that and show, that with your kids too.
Oh, I like that. My granddaughter wants to go to UNC. That'll be a field trip once we can get out of
Beth,
this.
if you would mind emailing us at Jeffco PTA too with that information, I'd love to share that as well. And not to be rude, I'm going to jump off the call and go to our next class to get that one set up. So Jen will end this, but and you all can keep talking for a few minutes as well. But Joyce, thank you. I love you, and thank you so much for everything.
Thanks for inviting me too.
Thank you.
Bye, Shauna.
Well, thank you very much, Joyce. We truly appreciate you coming. Is there anything final words you'd like to say, or anything you'd like to impart on us as we leave?
I have a phrase I want to say. Power to the parents.
I love it. Thank you so much, Joy. We're going to put all of this up on this. This will be a recording after, and then we'll put tea leaves up on the website, and the chat will come through. We'll put it all up on the website.
Okay, and I put it on there, the correct spelling.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I will text Jonna and give her the address.
Perfect. And I already ordered the book while you were talking. I ordered the book online, and my kids and I'll sit here and
it can be, you can get it at the library.
And I'll pass it on to the rest of the neighborhood. We'll all start reading it.
Okay, good. Have
Thank
a good
you so
day,
much for your time. You too. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.